Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about Professor Dungeon Master over on Dungeon Craft saying something that frankly I've been saying for a long time, right? So one of the things you'll find me saying here on my channel that's not said anywhere else, frankly, is Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion, is not a game. It is a human improvement engine built specifically by Gary Gygax in 1974, hidden as a game because he knew that bringing forward a human improvement engine would be rejected, right? But a game would be accepted and it would be allowed to grow into this really super special thing that would aid and assist all of humanity in combating foibles within our own personal selves, in social interaction, and, in my opinion, literally galactically through exploration, right? Like, it's one of the most important, powerful human improvement engines ever created, in my humble opinion, all right? But I'm sitting here over in a field all by myself, yelling out, hey, D&D ain't a game. In my humble opinion, this thing is a human improvement engine, right? And, for all of humanity, for society, and even for our humanity as we expand into other areas, onto Mars and then onto the moon and onto Mars, to Venus and Jupiter someday, like this whole solar system, right? Like, the magnitude of it is massive, right? So here I am, saying my thing, right? Catching the silvery barbs for doing it, right? And Professor Dungeon Master over there does a video yesterday, and he says, hey, check this out. Chris Cox was the CEO of Wizards of the Coast, right? And now he is the CEO of Hasbro. First of all, I'm proud. I beat Professor Dungeon Master to the punch. I already had a video on that like a week ago, right? Catch up, dude. Actually, all kidding aside, Professor Dungeon Master is one of my favorite D&D commentators. He's actually spectacular, and without a doubt, his content is better than mine. There's no comparison, right? I make the best content I can in the limited time I have, right? And he's like actually doing video editing, and like he takes his channel very seriously, and it's a better channel than mine. There are better channels on YouTube than mine when it comes to D&D commentary. I don't think there's any more that are more unique. I truly believe I have the most unique content on the internet on Dungeons & Dragons, but he definitely his is more high quality, all right? So check this out. So he comes on and he says that one of the reasons why Hasbro made Chris Cox made him specifically the CEO. The reason why they made him the CEO is they liked what he was throwing down. They liked what he was doing at Wizards of the Coast and said, hey, the model you are using for Dungeons and Dragons and for Magic Gathering, this is what we want for all of Hasbro, right? That's extremely exciting. And so then Professor Dungeon Master said one of the things that Chris Cox had been in charge of, that Mike Morales had talked about years ago, was that D&D is no longer... D&D, he didn't say D&D is not a game. What he said is D&D is a culture. It is a culture, and you buy into that culture. Exactly like Harley Davidson, right? And this is not small, right? So basically, when you go to tabletop role-playing games right now, you can go over and do a D&D knot, right? You can do a copy of a 1E or 2E Dungeons & Dragons, DCC, or OSC, or Five Torches Deep, or Index Card RPG, right? Now, here's the thing. You bought a product, right? But if you sign on for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you're not buying a product. You are choosing a culture and buying into that culture. Now, on the Harley Davidson side, right, you can buy a Kawasaki, and you can roll up to a motorcycle club in California and go, hey, look at my brand new $25,000 Kawasaki, and they will laugh you off the parking lot. They're like, get that piece of crap off of this parking lot. These are Harleys, American muscle, right? These are real motorcycles. You can take that nonsense and get to skipping, right? And they'll be like, you have a product. We have a way of life. right? And that's the division. That's why Chris Cox went from Hasbro to Wizards of the Coast CEO to Hasbro. This is what every company in the world is trying to do. They don't want to sell you a product. They want to sell you a life path, right? They want to sell you a culture. They want to sell you a divider, right? Harley Davidson is a divider, right? That is an American motorcycle better than anything in the world, right? And it doesn't even have to be better quality, right? Because for a long time, Harley was not the best quality bikes. In fact, I knew a guy who bought a much, much better quality bike, ended up selling it at a loss and buying a Harley because they laughed him off the parking lot. And it's the same today. You sign on for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you can roll into any FLGS and say, I play Dungeons & Dragons. If you roll into into an FLGS and declare, I play DCC, you can get laughed out of the shop because you're running a scrumpty game, right? Like OSE or Index Card RPG. And frankly, I'll say it right now. I think Index Card RPG has more brilliance and better art than Dungeons & Dragons. But I'm not going to roll into an FLGS and say, hey, let's play Index Card RPG, because I can get laughed out of the shop, right? Whereas with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you can roll into any FLGS and you could say, hey, I play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and they go, I know what that is because it's sitting on the shelf over there. What are the odds that Index Card RPG is sitting on the or that OSE or that DCC is sitting on any of the D&D knots are sitting on the shelf in that FLGS? Maybe 5% if you're lucky, right? And so the reality is, here I was so excited to just see Professor Dungeon Master from Dungeon Craft saying, hey, D&D is this, and the words is not a game. It's a culture, and you buy into that culture. So we are reaching a point where others in D&D commentary are coming and saying D&D is X, and the X is not a game. It's more than that. It's better than that. It's far-reaching than that. It is a culture. It is a life path. It is a human, and in my humble opinion, and I don't even need to, that's other people saying it's a culture, right? And I think culture is a life. I think what Harley has is a life path, right? But in my humble opinion, it's a humanity improvement engine, right? But I'm just so excited to finally see other D&D commentators coming and saying, at minimum, D&D is far more than a game. And also calling out that Dungeons & Dragons is not a product on the shelf. It is the bar that every other one is that every other product is measured by, and its quality doesn't even matter. This was a very hard-learned message, very hard-learned lesson, right? Kawasaki and Suzuki, they were making way better bikes, right? Triumph was building better bikes. There was another one, Ducati. They were making way better bikes, right? Like, the quality was much higher on all those bikes. And yet, you could go to a motorcycle club, many motorcycle clubs, and they would laugh you off the parking lot with a bike that could outrun any bog standard Harley. So they're like, oh, you got a rusted up, fat boy that's 5 years old and is kicking out smoke every 5 minutes? Welcome. You got a brand new $25,000 Cherry Ducati? Get to stepping. You have no place here, right? And that's where we are with Dungeons & Dragons. It is not a product. It is the bar by what every single product on the planet Earth in tabletop role-playing games is measured. Nothing comes close. It's in a league of its own. And Penny Marshall would be happy to have it. Well, that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.